Hi everyone, I'm Mara Webster with SAG-AFTRA Foundation, and thank you so much for tuning into another one of our conversations at home. Before I hand over today's conversation, I want to remind everyone watching, the SAG-AFTRA Foundation is a nonprofit organization which is continuing to raise funds for a COVID-19 Emergency Assistance Fund. This fund is working to support actors who are all out of work right now due to every single film and television production being closed, and is helping them with basic bills, paying utilities, and making rent right now. So please check out the details below this video and consider supporting if you're able to in any way. And it is my absolute pleasure right now to hand over to our moderator for today's conversation at home, Stacey Wilson-Hunt.
Thank you so much, and welcome everyone. I hope everyone is safe and sound and rested and fed and all the important aspects of living. And as Mara said, I'm Stacey Wilson-Hunt. I'm a journalist based in Los Angeles, and I'm so honored today to speak to Shira Haas. Shira, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you? We just said before, day by day, but doing well.
So congratulations on the show. I have to say you're one of the breakout stars of quarantine viewing. So that must feel like a distinct honor. So before we talk about Unorthodox, which there's just so much to discuss about this incredible show, I'd love to know more about you and how you became interested in acting. Tell me a little bit about your background in Tel-Aviv and how you first became a performer.
I wasn't born in Tel-Aviv. I'm now here, but I was born kind of like 30 minutes from here. I was a very, very shy child, believe it or not. I was always interested in like writing and theater and cinema. I loved watching it. I never thought I'll be an actress. You know, I always say that you have like these kids in your family that they're doing like shows at the end or in the middle of the dinner, you need to watch it. So I was not like that. I was writing, I was playing sports. I never thought I'll be like in the middle of attention, as you can call it like that. Mm-hmm. But then at some point when I was about like 15, I went to a theater major just because I found it interesting, you know. And I think there is really where I kind of fell in love with it. This is like the beginning of it, but not like big announcements or stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then actually the funny story is when I was 16 and a half, I got a message from a casting director in Israel that it's kind of a closure because she also was the casting director of Unorthodox. Wow. And she wrote me, that she see that I studied a theater major and she thinks just by the pictures that I might fit in, and she's not. I mean, she's a real person. She's not like a pedophile or something like that. You know, she showed me her work. She showed me that she's okay. And I didn't have agent or anything. I wasn't sure if I should go, and I just decided to go. And it was Princess. It was the first movie that I did when I was about 16 and a half. And that was kind of like my first encounter meeting with this cinema world, and I really fell in love with it. I had an amazing director as well that made me watch a lot of movies all of a sudden, and she talked to me about cinema acting. She really taught me about like how you can say a lot without saying anything at all, and so many things that I still carry with me, I want to believe, until this day. And this is like Narnia, you know, this project. I really found something in pretty early age that I'm really in love with. And this movie, I mean, and then Stacey came after that, which is also on Netflix, and this movie got into Sundance Film Festival, and that's how I got my representation also in the States. And after that came The Zookeeper's Wife. And then it kind of like rolled together. And I got a lot of no's. I just want to say it sounds like a beautiful romantic stories, you know, there's struggles and no's and stuff like that. But that's kind of like how it almost came to me, you know, in the beginning. And I'm so lucky with that because that's honestly the thing that I love doing the most.
Well, and every person watching this has a similarly sort of fascinating journey, but also filled with challenges that we definitely don't have time to even talk about because there's so many challenges.
They just need to believe us that there are, you know, they just need to really believe us. Yes,
absolutely. And tell me about you. I know you have met with and worked with Natalie Portman. Tell me about that partnership.
Yes, it was really, I mean, a long time ago, you can say.
Yeah.
I know I'm young, so I'm like scared to use those words, but it's really a long time ago. And it was amazing. I had a small role. It was even before The Zookeeper's Wife, which was more like a major role. So it was kind of the first international role, you can say, that I did. And she was amazing. She was also the director and also the lead in the movie. And it was amazing. I remember she was so humble and she was so nice. And I remember she shook my hand and she said that she heard so many things about me and she's happy to meet me. And I was like 17 and I was like, huh? You know? And it really it was a short but amazing experience because it really kind of made me hungry for more, you know?
Right.
And got me very excited. And it was a very positive experience, definitely.
Well, I imagine she saw, obviously she started acting, I think at 12. And
Leon, professional.
Right. So amazing, which is 25 years ago now. Hard to believe.
My age.
Exactly. The movie came out, you were born. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I imagine she saw a lot of herself in you. And I actually see a lot of similarities between the two of you. So that hopefully you can work together again. So we are here to
send her this video. Yeah.
Yes, we'll tag her. We'll put it on Twitter. So we're here to talk about Unorthodox, which is such a stirring, incredible story. I actually used to live in Brooklyn, and I used to see the Hasidic community in my neighborhood all the time. And there's such an air of mystery about this community. And also, I think there's a lot of misinformation and maybe people who don't understand their traditions and don't understand the way they live. I'm curious how much you knew about the Hasidic community. Obviously, you have somewhat of a connection, but not really. It's not as if you grew up knowing a lot of these folks, but tell me what you knew and also what made you want to say yes to this project, which it's a very difficult thing to take on.
Yes. So, I mean, I was familiar with the Hasidic word, but what's really important to say that maybe some people know it, but there are so many communities, there's so many, and each one is so different from one another. I mean, I know some obviously that are in Israel, and I portrayed Hasidic character, Orthodox character, let's say, in Shtisel, but it's completely a different word from one another. I mean, playing Ruchami and playing Esti, I can compare this to I can compare it to any other character almost that I did. And it's important to know that it's not like this is the only way that, you can't generalize it. And I think that's something that this shows pretty well. But I wasn't too aware of the Satmar community that we're talking about in this, the specific community that we talked about in this show. So of course I had to do a lot of research, which happened even before I arrived to Berlin to the rehearsals, just like my kind of home research. I'm also kind of like a nerd, so I love doing researches. I love acting because I love acting, of course, but I love the opportunity to learn new stuff. So I dived into it before, and I learned a lot of new things that I didn't know. But also, if you look at the show again, if you want to, or just to believe me, you won't hear even one time the name of the community, for example.
Right.
I mean, it was for me very important to do this research so I can do justice with the character, but the name of the place is not the main thing about the show. And that's also for your second half of the question. That's what I found so fascinating, that it tells us, besides the fact that it's an amazing and complex and so rare character to portray, right? But it also tells a story about so-called different people, we can call it like that, in the beginning when you think about it, and maybe you're start the show curious to see this word, right?
Right. But
then slowly, and that's what happened to me while reading it, it didn't matter to me. I wasn't just fascinated by reading the script. I was also kind of I saw myself in Esti, this urge to find yourself and what is freedom, especially in our times, in these months, what is freedom? And I think that's also why so many people, not necessarily religious or Jewish or anyhow, can relate to it, because it's a show about people. We all have desires and dreams and disappointments, and that's what I really found fascinating while reading it.
It's hard, I think, as modern women to watch the way women exist in the community and not I guess, for lack of a better term, feel sorry for the way women live in that world, especially sex and all the things that we grew up knowing about. I mean, she didn't even know her own anatomy. And that scene in the bathroom where she's discovering literally parts of her body, it really is heartbreaking for me to see that. How are you managing that piece of it without also sort of villainizing the way that women are treated? Because you want to be respectful, but also Esti is a rebel. That's the whole point of the story. So how are you balancing the two of those, respecting the traditions, but also acknowledging this is not for her?
This is such a great question. And I mean, we talked about it so much, and I always had this conflict within me, you know. I wanted people to root for Esti because there's a lot to root for, right?
Yeah.
She deserves her freedom in this journey, and B, because it's the lead character and you need to feel for her. But at the same time, showing black and white situation is not only not interesting, it's also not moral, and not like it doesn't exist almost, I think, as I see things. And also it's not interesting to tell a story like that. And it was always about this balance, about telling what you think and having also something to say, which is okay. This is kind of like also part of doing art, I believe, and not being scared of it, but at the same time showing the whole picture. And I think even by the character of Yankee, you know, that he did so many mistakes, but you feel for him. You really feel for him.
Yeah.
And even like Bobby and, you know, some of the other characters and small family moments, and also the fact that we try to do their life so accurate to the real life. It was really important for everyone, yes, to say sometimes a statement, but also to show the whole picture, because life is complex. And that's, I mean, also Yankee, I mean, he did a lot of mistakes, but that's what he was raised to, you know, that's the only thing you know. And he has like good intentions, and I think he really loves her. So it was always about complexity. And we had so many discussions about that. So, yeah.
Well, it also speaks to none of us has a choice, the world that we're born into, whether good or bad, or however you feel about it. So I think it's just a matter of respecting that idea that none of us choose our lives and our parents, but the choices we make later are certainly our own as we grow up. And speaking of Yankee, it sounds like you have known your co-star for about 10 years. Tell me how you first met.
That's true. You know, I mean, I was, like I said before, I was in a theater major in like a school of arts, and he was in a different school of arts, also in theater major. And we had like friends in common. And then we met one time, I think it's sort of a party, and we became like, boom, friends. We had like the same humor. He's like, that's a fun fact as well. I mean, he's so funny.
He doesn't get a chance to be very funny.
Oh, well, you should talk. He's really funny. That also shows how great actor he is, right?
He is really excellent.
So he's excellent. And it was just like a bonding since then. And, you know, and we always talked about the fact that we should like act together. We need to work together. And then it just came 10 years later in just the best way possible. And it was so great to have him, because we didn't have much rehearsals about the physical scenes, for example. And it was so nice to be with someone that I can like totally 100% trust. So,
and his name is Amit?
Amit.
That's his first name.
Amit,
Amit.
yeah.
Okay, want to make sure we acknowledge him. He's really wonderful. And obviously the show is based on Deborah Feldman's memoir, also called Unorthodox. Did you have access to her during production? Did you spend time with her at all?
Of course, I've read the book over and over again. And I had my marks, and, you know, and I did take a lot of inspiration from it. But it was really, really important also for the producers, and also for myself, not to try to imitate or try to be but to create our own kind of Esti, that she is so influenced and inspired by Deborah and Deborah's story, but yes, to create something authentic. And that's why I did not meet her before.
You didn't? Wow. Okay.
I didn't, even though I asked, but we talked. And then I met her, I think it was the second week of shooting. I was already with like my shaved hair, and I remember we were sitting to brunch, and I was like, like this. I just wanted to listen to her, and I was so excited. And she came to set a few times, and she even came to Israel one time, and we've met, and we're in a very good relation. And she's amazing. I mean, I respect her a lot, and I took a lot from her memorial and from her. Yeah.
And what has she told you about the performance overall and how it felt to see her life played out that way?
So I woke up in one morning in Tel-Aviv. I think it was a few months ago, right? I think it was really early. And I just woke up and I saw a message from her that she told me that she saw the episode. And I think that's all she said to me.
Okay.
And I was like, and?
So were you worried? You were scared,
Yeah,
maybe.
I was terrified. And then she just, I mean, we talked and she loved it. She was very emotional and she thought it was amazing. Also the story, and also lucky for me, also the performance. And I felt after that so relieved. And yes, she really loved it. And
oh, good.
I could breathe. I could breathe after that.
That is a lot of pressure, though, not only playing a real person, but playing someone who's so, in such a raw way, has exposed a part of life that very few women have had the chance to tell this kind of story.
That's true. And also, I told her as well, a lot of time when stories are based or inspired by, it's a lot of time either deceased people or very old people. And she's really not that older than me. Right. I have best friends that are her age, and it's still so close to me as well. And it even brought kind of like more responsibility to it. And she was also kind of like emotionally very involved in it, which makes sense. So yes, there was a responsibility. While I filmed it, I obviously did not think of it, and I was really concentrating just telling the story the best I can. But I definitely, I mean, it was an urge within me to also do justice to her. And that's something that I never experienced before. So it was very, very special. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And you mentioned your shaved head, which I must say your hair has grown out beautifully. It looks lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Obviously, that scene, which is so incredible to see the emotional experience on Esti's face. And obviously, you can only do one take with a scene like that. Yeah. So how carefully did you have to plan that sequence when she's getting her head shaved?
So it was on the first shooting day.
Really? Wow.
Yes. First shooting day. One heck of a welcome. But I mean, yeah, but I think thinking about it now, I think it was for the best also because it kind of like, I got rid of the stress, you know, I didn't need to wait for it or like, oh my God, just
right.
cut it
You just like, you shed it right away.
Exactly. And also it really got me into the characters, you know, to the next days that we had, a lot of days that we shot. And it was everything. I mean, it was almost kind of like Esti in a way, that she's very excited and happy and she got married, but she has questions and she's scared. So also me as Shira, I had mixed emotion. I was happy and excited and to become Esti and also to do this project. But of course I was also nervous. Right. And I remember the director, Maria Schrader, the amazing director, she talked with me about it a few days before and she was like, please don't prepare anything. Don't prepare anything. I love to be very prepared for the things that I do. And she was like, there's no one way to do it because it's so mixed, the emotions there. She said, just bring everything. There's no right or wrong. You're happy, bring it. You're sad, bring it. And you know, at the end of the day, there's like 20 seconds on the show, but it was like 8 minutes. So it was really kind of like a roller coaster of emotions. From joy to sadness, and it was beautifully intense. Definitely, yeah.
Well, that certainly comes across. It is really, I can still see Esti's face and the tears, and it's really beautiful. And among all these other incredible things that you had to bring to the performance, you also had to become fluent in Yiddish and be able to speak English and be able to sing and be able to play the piano. It's a lot of skills. So tell me, how much familiarity did you have with each of those skills before, and how much training did you have to do to feel comfortable doing all those things?
So I always love to sing. Let's start with the easier, not easier, but because it gets worse after that. No, no, but I always love to sing. I mean, I always sang, always loved it. I always also found myself in other roles that I did. I was singing even in The Zookeeper's Wife and also in another TV series that I did. it did require some lessons also because it's a different language. You know, there were like 2 songs, one in German and one in Hebrew. And it needs to have preparations, but not too much, I must say. They also wanted it to be authentic, so they didn't want to, they want me to do it almost alone, you know, the preparation for it, which is
she's also
amazing.
auditioning, and we don't want her to sound like a professional singer.
Exactly.
We want her to be raw, and she's really, in that scene where you're auditioning, is just, talk about like it's almost like a rebirth when we see her almost becoming a new person in front of those people's eyes. She's just like coming out of her shell.
Yeah, I mean, it's a show about a woman that is finding her voice, you know, and this show and this scene, I mean, she's literally like finding it. I think it was, even with the shaving scene and other scenes, that was maybe the most stressful and important day for me, because I feel like talking about responsibility, it's so symbolic, and there were so many people and no one knew what would come out of me. So I really felt like Stacey. I was like, oh my God, I hope I won't disappoint, you know. And it was really emotional that day. So yes, so there weren't a lot of preparation for that, but there were some. As for piano, I did not know it before. I had a few lessons for this piece. Okay. I mean, I knew a little bit when I was younger, but I needed to refresh it. Right. English, it was mostly about the accent. My English, thank God, is fluent, but it needed to like remove any Israelity if you hear it sometimes, right?
Well, I see, just hearing you speak now, you can tell the work that you did there's that specific Brooklyn Hasidic community accent that sounds nothing like the way you speak. So that's very interesting. Of course,
yeah, it needed to be very specific, especially for the women characters, because the men just you know, I mean, the men are more like studying, but the women, I mean, the English is such an important thing with Esty. So we had a lot of dialect lessons on that to bring that specific accent. It's not an American accent, but it's a very specific one.
It is.
And then we go to the Yiddish, right?
It's amazing.
I did not know it before. Yes, that I did not know before. And this one, it was, I guess, the biggest practical challenge that I had. We had a lot of lessons with Eli Rosen. He also plays the rabbi. He also was our Yiddish and religious consultant.
Oh, he's great. Mm-hmm.
He's great. And we just spent days together. Like my brain at some point was melting. I always laugh with him that he kind of like saw the darkest side of me. So like, it's a big challenge to know it. And I recorded him and I recorded myself and I wrote it like in Hebrew, so I'll know it better.
Wow.
And I wanted to know it also so well. So not only just to say it automatically, but to be so fluent with that, so I can have some changes, you know, and that I can be free with that I be like Esty, and that I'll be really able to act.
Right. So well, what's so interesting, and I've heard Yiddish off and on in my life, but hearing this much of it, you really realize how many English words are infused, and it's almost like what we would call Spanglish in California, you know, where you have children of immigrants who've grown up speaking English, but also Spanish, and how the two are combined. But I have to imagine that makes it harder to learn because then you're including English words along with this very old language. That just must have been, was your brain just melting at that point?
yeah, definitely. But I mean, some words are similar to English, some words are similar to German, a lot of it actually, and some little words are similar to Hebrew. It's kind of like Yiddish, it's kind of like a mix of everything. Mm-hmm. And it was confusing at some point, but then you kind of like, you get the rhythm of it, you get the specific things of it. I also enjoyed, for example, to read at this time Yiddish poetry, you know. It's just so beautiful, and so we don't know how much there is of it, and I enjoyed like doing research of it and really to understand like the language itself, because it's really like the base for so many languages. So it was really interesting to learn, and once I got it, it was so much easier. But there was definitely this moment in the beginning that I was like, Ellie, I'm not sure if I'm gonna do it. But then we skipped it pretty soon, so it worked well, I hope.
No, you did an amazing job. And so the series has been on Netflix for almost 2 months now, but which coincided almost exactly with when everyone was sheltering in place. It's sort of incredible that it just kind of like, it was delivered to us almost like a gift when we needed it the most. And I was wondering, how has your life changed with this story being out in the world? I mean, are you just getting constant messages on social media? What's the feedback from fans that you've received in the last 2 months?
It's really, really, I mean, beyond, I would speak in my behalf, but really beyond what I expected. I get a lot of messages, and the surprising thing is not only like the amount of messages, it's also so many different people. You know, I get somehow from Argentina and the US and younger age, and, you know, teenagers and older elderly people, and the amount of versatility of the people that are writing and approaching, that's the unbelievable thing, I think. And yes, it's still going on, and it's really beautiful to get, and I really feel the love. Aww. And, you know, I mean, I don't know if people will believe me, but when you do a project, at least to me, I mean, you sometimes almost forget that it will get people eventually, because you are so concentrated in what you're doing and you're trying to do your best, and then suddenly it's out there and you're like, oh yes, that's why I do it, to get to people, right? And it was so powerful also on Netflix, and also of course on the quarantine, and it was beyond what I expected, and big, and yeah, and beautiful.
That's so great. And did you hear from Natalie Portman? Did she send her regards?
No, but no hard feelings.
I'm sure she'll get around to it. I'm sure she's been busy.
No, please, he doesn't need to.
And what kind of work would you like to do moving forward? Even just getting to know you in the last half hour, you're very fun. I feel like you need to do something a little bit more lighthearted, maybe some comedy.
Oh, interesting. I mean, I have this light side of me, of course, in real life, among other sides that I have. You know, I always feel like in interviews, you really bring who you are, but you try to bring all of it, but, you know, so I'm just trying to be who I am right now, and I'm having fun with you, so I guess that's part of it. But I mean, as for like what I want to do, it's always about telling stories, you know. I was never scared of like telling in test or taboo stories. I mean, I think it's important part of like art to bring things to the table. And yes, it can be, I mean, I'm also of course into drama, but comedy, why not, of course. And just it's about interesting stories. It's about different cultures. It's about different people. And like I said before, I mean, seeing someone a bit different and seeing you inside of them. I mean, the fact that it can connect between people, that's kind of like the power of it. And that's what I want to keep doing, and as different as possible from one another. Yeah.
So a good diversity of stories.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I have no doubt that once we can start shooting again, you're going to be very busy. I have a feeling.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And for those who haven't watched Unorthodox, this has certainly enticed them to add it to their list. So congratulations again.
Thank you so much.
And stay well.
You too.